I'm here with Nic Vidot from Sydney in Australia, now retired to Canberra. And Nic is going to be talking to us about using solutions focus as a principal of a school that was St Andrew's College in Western Sydney. It had, or has, he's now retired, 1,100 students over 2 campuses. And we're going to listen to how he's used it at the school and a bit about the background of what has brought him to Solutions Focus. Nic, thank you for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to find Solutions Focus and what influenced you towards it?
Well, I'll start with my own life, I guess. When I was doing my master's degree at Monash, I did a program on mentoring, which I found very engaging and fitted very well with how I do things. But prior to that, I was studying as a Jesuit student for 14 years after leaving school. And I'm greatly influenced by the St. Ignatius and his spirituality. And one key aspect of that spirituality is what is called the margis, or the more. But rather than building on the quantity of that and doing more and more and more, it's really about depthing the quality of what you do and the interactions you have, and going to the boundaries, pushing the boundaries, not being satisfied with what is. It's always been trying to make it better. And in that sense, in the Catholic and Christian sense, or religious sense, is doing that for the greater glory of God. So that's stuck with me throughout my life. I don't make it very religious necessarily, depending on the group I'm with, but normally I would just speak in secular terms of what that is, and challenge people to come along with me. And then when I was appointed to St Andrews in 2007, shortly afterwards, I came across Growth Coaching International.
Mm-hmm.
In 2009, I went to their first ever coaching education conference in Sydney. And I then did their full program. I didn't apply for accreditation, that's not quite where I am. And then a little later, I was very fortunate to do a few-day seminar with Mark McCurgow, the guru of Solution Focus. And then I did a number of programs with Growth Coaching International regarding their work, but also Solution Focus as well. And which culminated really in this last year in retirement. I was fortunate enough to do the program, international online program for the University of Wisconsin, taught by Mark himself. So it's been something that's in my life naturally, and then latterly I've actually done did a formal program in it. But in the last 10 years of principalship, I used it a lot from growth coaching, and also from Mark's own seminar I did.
Okay. So, and when you said about the more is about deepening, how did you, before we get on to Solutions Focus in particular, how did that affect your leadership as a principal?
Well, it affected that I was never satisfied with what we were doing. People would say, "Oh, Nic, we're doing really well." And I said, "Yes, we are, but what more can we do? Where can we take this further? How can we make this even better in our school for our students?" For example, our results started to grow, and people said, "Well, aren't you satisfied?" I said, "Yeah, of course I am. I rejoice with what the students have done. It's wonderful. But we can't just rest there. We have to keep developing it and making it better for the next group, and then the next group. And we learn from each group to make it better for the next group. And it's also pushing it to the boundaries and saying, well, what are the best ways of using pedagogy to help each student, not just the amorphous mass of students in front of us. And then with individuals, I'd say, well, okay, I've got this idea and so forth, and then just by questioning and dialoguing with them, pushing them to refine it and be better at it. So it's always been in the back of my mind, that whole thing of Margis.
And in terms of how it means you act as a principal, whether your style as a principal, what has it meant in terms of working with people and that background?
It's meant that I hope I have anyway, taken people seriously, to take it very much a personal, person-to-person approach. It's not about me, it's about them. It's about them being the best person they can be in whatever role they're doing, and enhancing and giving them opportunities to enhance that and grow as a person.
Drawing them out.
Yes. Very much so.
So those are fantastic leadership skills. So when you started thinking about SF as such a skilled person, what in general was it adding that wasn't there before?
It was adding a precision about how you do it. The questioning, the processes that in SF are well, they fit in neatly with who I am, and they gave a framework that I could work with to deepen what I was doing and to make it better. Okay,
so it gave you a structure, is what you're saying, in a sense. A way of doing.
The way of doing.
Yeah, beyond an intuitive, natural skill.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Okay, so when did you start introducing SF, and how did you go about that?
Well, I did the program with Mark, as I said, way back in 2011 or something, about that time. And I just introduced it to the leadership team. The leadership team included the 3 assistant principals, 2 in charge of religion across each campus, business manager and the executive secretary, my own secretary and registrar. And I introduced it by using Mark's book on solution focus, Mark and Paul Jackson's book on solution focus. And just at each meeting would be probably for one term, I used to have a professional learning aspect to the leadership meeting. And I introduced it to them, and then I would use it with them in the meeting, and I got them to use it with each other in the meeting. We actually practiced in the meeting.
What difference did it make?
It made people far clearer about what they were doing, had greater precision and clarity, that sense of clarity about what they're doing. It also pushed them to the extent where you got the best, whatever it was we were discussing. I can remember one time one of the religious education coordinators said, "Oh, we've never discussed this." Well, I wasn't particularly happy, I have to say, because it was something we were doing in the school. It was so obvious, and he said he didn't know about it. But I used the solution-focused approach rather than saying, "Well, we do this." I then said, "Well, what have you noticed in the school?" And then
what had he noticed?
Well, he had noticed a few things in terms of the programs we were doing in the school. It's about pedagogical change we were going through in the school. And he had a certain thing he had to prepare and present at that meeting, and he said I couldn't do it because I didn't know. But after 5 minutes intense solution-focused dialogue across the table, everyone else has sat back in their chairs, just watched. I led him out, and he realised, "Oh yes, I do know this, I do know that." And I said, "That's good. So what small step could you do?" And he said, "Well, I could bring something to the next meeting." And I said, "Well, that's good. So next meeting you will present whatever it was." Can't remember now what it was. And we look forward to listening to that and taking that further with you. And he said, "Okay." So it's at that leadership meeting, people then realised that they could challenge others through using this process. And it took one of the APs, I think she was very good AP, but still thought, oh, principal's the principal and I'm an AP. And I said, no, no, no. You have ideas as good as me, if not better. So you have to challenge me as well. And she did. She was excellent.
So that the challenging took a different form.
Yes. And it was always an engaging challenge. It was not a negative challenge. It was a challenge to take things further forward rather than say, oh, that's not a good thing you're doing. For example, let's have it. I can't give a concrete example, but process-wise would be, oh, I really like that. However, have you thought of this? Or could this be a possibility that would help move this agenda further forward for us and be better for us?
And then what would you do with that? After that statement, what would you then do in a solution-focused way?
Solution-focused, I would say, what would I notice? What difference would that make? What small steps can you suggest that we then enter into? Or ask staff what small steps can they do to bring this about? And that became just the way we worked. So it became not really solution focused, it just was what we did.
You have a very gentle personality, and I wondered, and maybe you it's not something you've thought about, I don't know, whether you think your gentleness helped bring in solutions focus. How much of it was about you as well?
Oh, I don't usually talk about myself in that regard, but people have said that when I left anyway, they said that, and the system said that the way I went about doing things assisted people to embrace change. And they put in words that I was able to bring people along and take them on different paths and all that sort of thing. But I would say it was more, I might have suggested something and nurtured that, but it was other people who actually brought it to being because of their expertise in whatever area it was. And I certainly honour people's expertise and skill and well-being in that regard.
Can you give us a few more examples? You mentioned to me about starting something about the principal sitting with students. Yes,
I can. I was fortunate. I was in Canada and I was on professional learning experience. And the school, the principal used to meet once a term with all the students. It wasn't all the senior school, the last year of school. And so I think it's about 120 students. And said, you can bring any problem, anything you wanted, any suggestion or whatever. You just come and I'll listen and we'll dialogue. And I actually sat in on one of those. I thought, this is really good. So when I came back, I said, I'm going to do that, but I'll do it twice a term with all student leaders. So it's all the SRC, Student Representative Council, all the house captains across both campuses, because they're bringing the school together that way. But also I invited each class leader to come.
Oh, wow, okay.
So from year 7 to year 12. So it was a group of about 1,100 in the school. So it was nearly a tenth of the school were there. And they could bring anything. I didn't mind what they brought, suggestions, whatever. But I said, if you have a gripe or you want change, you have to come with a solution. And I then used the solution-focused processes with them to bring about refinement of their ideas and so forth. And one beautiful idea was they wanted to celebrate multiculturalism. We had 68 language groups in the school. And I said, that's really good. And they said, we want a multicultural day because every other school has a multicultural day. And I said, oh, do they now? That's really lovely. I said, what do you want to do? And they said, we want harmony. And I said, harmony, what does that really mean? And then they tossed that around. And I said, really, it seems to me, if I could put this word into your mind, see what you think anyway. What about unity? And they said, yes, we'll call it Unity Day. And I said, well, you have to go to staff and ask about this. And they went to staff and they explained what they wanted, the purpose of it, the rationale of it, how they'd go about doing it, right down to very fine details about the whole day. And the staff, well, what could they say? And so that is now still part of the school after 10 years, a decade or more. So they have things like they have dance and language and sport from the different cultures during the day, and they would run it themselves. They'd run it. Staff would supervise, but the students would run it. The senior students would run it.
Were they noticing that you were using a different approach in those conversations twice a term?
I don't know if they did actually, because I did that with them individually anyway, out in the yard. Or I don't think they've ever had that experience where they were taken seriously though, in terms of student leadership. Because I was using it as a formation process as well for them, rather than just saying, "Oh, let's listen to you," and "Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea," or whatever. But use that process with them, and whether they notice.
When you say formation process, what do you mean by formation?
Yes. Formation in that sense, their personal development as a human being.
Okay.
As against formation, where Catholic schools and religious schools talk about formation in the formation of the religion and the ethos. I was really thinking of formation of them as a human being and a good human being.
I'm really fascinated by you saying you took it out into the yard, and I suppose all the other staff did as well.
Those who saw what I was doing, yes, I think they did. Yes.
What impact did it have? What did you see change in the yard?
Oh, what did I see? That'd be a bit hard for me to say that. I think there was.
So I should say the yard. Sorry, we better say what the yard is, because not everyone has. That's a very Australian.
Oh, well, the yard. Going during recess and lunchtime, going out and talking to students and just thinking how things going and that kind of thing. But one aspect of all this was. One year, I used to give them at the beginning of the year liturgy. We have just some points, and one year I talked about no yelling, no telling. I was really about staff doing this, but I'd say it to all. Anything I say to staff, I say to students, so they couldn't argue against each other, play each other off. And that thing about no yelling doesn't mean you don't get challenged. I said, staff will challenge you, but they're not going to yell. And you could see there was a quietening within the yard. I'm not saying it was perfect, because humans are humans and you occasionally have this and that. But a staff member wouldn't come out of nowhere and start yelling at someone doing the wrong thing. They would come and ask them, is that something we do here at St Andrews? Is that something that we foster here? Etc., etc. So it wasn't a condemnation of the student, but a questioning, getting them to think, oh, what am I doing? Oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing that.
That's extraordinary. It must have been an extraordinary principle.
Well, I used that same method, say, if a student had done something really wrong and we suspended them, or we never expelled any. In my 12 years there, we actually transferred about half a dozen students to another Catholic school. We never got them out of the system. But when they were coming back from suspension, one of my APs enjoyed telling them what they'd done wrong again and again, and almost, pushing them through the wall of the office. And what I used to do is I said, I will lead the discussion, and the parents there, and I'd say, well, tell me what you did wrong. What have you learnt from that? What are you going to notice? What are people going to notice about you now that you've come back? What little steps are you going to take to ensure that you've learnt from this and you're going to be better for it? Because I know you've got it in you. It's just that you've taken the wrong course here somewhere. That made a big impact, because they went out thinking, oh, I'm still worthy of something. And their parents could see, yes, he's taken the issue and made a very strong stance on the issue, but is trying to nurture my child, son or daughter.
Wow.
I did make one mistake, and this is, I'll tell it now because it's important. This student had physically assaulted another student. But what I did at the interview was went straight in. I didn't ask those questions this time. I'm not sure why I did it. And I said, well...
'Cause you're human?
Perhaps it is. And for that reason, I'm going to have him move from this school to another school. And I'll actively be involved in making sure that he's placed in another school and will be happier there. But he can't stay here. Well, all hell broke loose. And I thought that was a really good learning. And the mother was particularly angry at me, with me. Fair enough. And I used to see her later at debating, because the daughter was still at the school, brilliant debater, the daughter. And I said, will I or will I not? I go across the hall and say something to her. Oh, and I did. And I said, you were right, what you said. And I apologise. But it was the best thing for your son, though. And she said, yes, it has been. So we had a great, or sort of a reconciliation, I guess. But it was still with that sense of solution focus. It wasn't sort of, how am I going to put it? I think you have to be humble. I don't like talking about myself. But I think you have to be seen to be doing the right thing with people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Any other particular stories that you'd like to tell us?
Oh gosh. Well, it's not a story, but when I was leaving, and one of the APs was giving a farewell speech, she gave a little snippet of what next. How would you notice? What difference is it making? You suddenly find the way forward, and you. She said, if Nic ever used that language with you, you know you've just been coached. And I thought, oh, that's nice. That's nice, because people wouldn't know if I was coaching them or not. You know how they talk about in the informal conversation, the corridor or in staff room or whatever.
Yeah.
I would use it then, or if they drop in into my office, because they can come in any time. I didn't mind people coming in. Mm-hmm. So I'd use it then too.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you reflect on using solutions focus in the school, you seem to use it in all sorts of areas. Yes. How would you describe the transformational effect that it had?
I think the transformation was, the effect it had was it enabled people to be far clearer about what they're doing. I was always on about precision. I don't care what you do, as long as you're precise about what you're doing and the students know what you're doing, so they have precision too. And I think it did bring that clarity, that sense of focus forward, and people generally move with that dynamic. See, I would even use it. I'd use it at assemblies, even the way I spoke at assembly. I'd use some of that language. I'd use it at staff meetings with the whole, 120 staff there. I'd use it as well. And I think that by doing that, it did permeate the culture of the school.
Wow. Okay. And
you have to be authentic, though. You have to be real and genuine about it. I mean, I notice I notice on webinars and so forth, we talk about coaching this and coaching that and doing this and doing that. But then I think our humanity gets in the way sometimes, and we are not really promoting the well-being of everybody, but I'm conscious of myself being the leader and doing things. Whereas personally, I feel that if I haven't nurtured and drawn them out, then I've failed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This might be I don't know if it is a hard one to do on the spot. I'm hearing many principles of leadership from you, and then you added solutions focus to those principles, such as precision. You had precision anyway, precision as a belief as a leader, and then solutions focus enabled those descriptions. Can you give us your top 5, 10, whatever you want to say about principles of good leadership?
Principles of good leadership. I think you have to have a very strong vision, personal vision. You have to be a person who is willing to listen intently. You have to be a person who is willing to compromise not the vision, but the how-to. You have to have an unbelievable, no, not unbelievable, I can't think of the word I want to use, but it's a very strong belief in staff that they are professional and they can do it. But you might give them the parameters saying, well, I'd like this in the school because it's really good. What do you think? And they'll toss it around and say, oh, but can we do it this way or that way? And I said, look, you're professional. You just do it. You can do it. And we'll see how it happens. We introduced this thing called it's moving away from your top 5, but anyway, things about what they called learning intentions to make learning have greater precision. So you put this learning today. We're learning about whatever subject you're in, and there were debate about should it be written this way or that way or whatever way. I said, I don't mind how you write it, as long as you know what you're teaching and the students know what they're learning in whatever you write on that board each lesson. Simple as that. I said, yes. I said, you're a teacher. You're a professional teacher. You know how to do this. You probably know how to do it better than I do. So back yourself and go for it. Then when I walked around the school and went into classrooms, you'd see different sorts of learning intention, but they all had precision about them. What more could I ask for?
Absolutely.
So I think it's about vision. It's about listening. It's about being attentive to who you have there and nurturing them. You have to nurture. It's not about blasting people. If you didn't like something, you could ask a solution-focused question. Again, it's about drawing people out to be the better person, the better teacher, better staff member. And the same goes with students as well, and parents.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone's part of the school. Yeah.
Exactly.
This has been thank you for your graciousness and such an inspiring listen. I really loved it, and I'm sure our solutions focused community will as well.
No, thank you very much, Kerry. Thank you.
See you.
Bye. See you now. Bye-bye.
Bye.